It started quietly, the way most betrayals do. Not with a dramatic revelation, but with small, almost imperceptible shifts. The distance between two people that had once felt electric began to widen. The texts became shorter, the laughs less genuine, the touches more mechanical. And somewhere in that fragile silence, something broke, not loudly, but completely. Infidelity rarely begins in the bedroom. It starts in the mind, in the soft spaces where unmet needs take root. It begins with loneliness, disguised as routine. With longing, disguised as curiosity. With exhaustion, disguised as indifference. For most, cheating isn't about sex at all. It's about being seen again, being chosen again, being alive again. Evelyn had been married to Mark for 11 years. To anyone looking in, their marriage was steady, predictable even. They had 2 kids, a modest home, and a comfortable rhythm that never wavered. But comfort, she had come to realize, was its own kind of emptiness. Somewhere along the way, love had been replaced by logistics, school drop-offs, grocery lists, mortgage payments. Every conversation revolved around what needed to be done, never what needed to be felt. The first time she met Daniel, it wasn't planned. He was a co-worker, kind, attentive, and always ready with a smile that seemed to hold understanding. Their connection began with harmless banter, a shared frustration over deadlines, an exchanged glance that lingered half a second too long. Evelyn told herself it was nothing, that she was simply enjoying attention she hadn't felt in years. But that's the danger. Infidelity doesn't begin with desire. It begins with validation. Mark, on the other hand, had never thought of himself as the type to be cheated on. He was loyal, consistent, and proud of the stability he provided. But somewhere beneath that stoic sense of duty, resentment had begun to fester. He felt unappreciated, invisible. He couldn't understand why his efforts were met with sighs instead of gratitude. When he found comfort in late-night conversations with a woman from an online forum, someone who laughed at his jokes, who asked about his day, it felt harmless, even innocent. But it wasn't. It was a doorway, and he walked through it willingly. People cheat for reasons they can't always name. Sometimes it's emotional neglect, sometimes it's insecurity. Sometimes it's fear. The fear of aging, of fading, of losing the person they once were. The affair becomes a mirror that reflects back the version of themselves they miss. They don't want a new partner. They want to feel new again. Evelyn's first real mistake wasn't kissing Daniel. It was the day she started hiding things. The small lies that slipped out so easily. Just working late. It's a client call. I'll be home soon. Each lie built a wall between her and the life she had promised to protect. And the more she lied, the more she convinced herself that what she was doing made sense. She told herself she deserved to feel happy, that she wasn't hurting anyone if no one knew. But secrets always find their way into the light. Mark noticed the change, the absent-minded smiles, the late-night texts, the sudden bursts of laughter from another room. He didn't want to believe it, but the truth had a way of making itself known in the smallest cracks. When he finally confronted her, there were no screams, no accusations, just silence. The kind of silence that weighs more than any word could. Evelyn cried, but she couldn't explain why she did what she did. Because there wasn't a single reason, there never is. It wasn't that she didn't love him, it was that she didn't feel loved. It wasn't that she wanted someone else, it was that she wanted to feel wanted again. And as she spoke, Mark realized that he, too, had been guilty of neglect, of routine, of forgetting that love needs tending. Infidelity isn't just about betrayal, it's about the quiet breakdown of connection. It's about 2 people who stopped trying, who let life fill the space where love used to live. The real reasons people cheat are rarely cruel, they're deeply human. Desire, validation, loneliness, revenge, boredom. They're all just different expressions of the same ache, the need to feel alive in someone's eyes again. In the aftermath, Evelyn and Mark tried to rebuild. Therapy, long talks, nights spent untangling the pain they had both caused. Some days felt hopeful, others unbearable. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal in straight lines. It heals in circles, with relapses of doubt and flickers of forgiveness. Months later, as they sat together in their kitchen, the same one that had once been silent, Mark reached for her hand. For the first time in a long time, Evelyn didn't pull away. The wound was still there, yes, but beneath it, something faintly real was growing again. The truth about cheating is this: it's not about weakness or evil. It's about need. The need to be seen, to be touched, to be understood. People cheat not because they stop loving their partners, but because they stop loving themselves in the relationship they're in. And sometimes, it takes losing everything to finally understand that love isn't something you find. It's something you keep choosing, even when it feels impossible. In the months that followed, the story of Evelyn and Mark unfolded like an old wound being reopened again and again. There were no grand gestures of redemption, no cinematic apologies. Just slow, painstaking honesty, the kind that strips people bare. They both had to confront not only what had been done but why. The why was the hardest part. Evelyn began to realize that her affair had less to do with Daniel and more to do with herself. The attention, the laughter, the flutter in her chest. It wasn't love. It was recognition. For years, she had been a wife, a mother, a worker. She had forgotten what it felt like to simply be a woman. The affair was intoxicating because it reminded her of her own reflection, of the person she used to be before her life became a list of responsibilities. Daniel, in truth, had never promised her much. Their connection lived in stolen glances and brief exchanges that faded as soon as they ended. But it was enough to feed a hunger she didn't understand. When it all came crashing down, she realized how fragile the illusion had been, how easily something that felt like freedom could turn into a cage of guilt. Mark's pain came in waves. At first, there was anger, a cold, burning kind that left no space for compassion. But once the fury subsided, it was replaced by something worse: confusion. He had done everything he thought a good husband should. He had worked hard, paid bills on time, kept the family steady. What he hadn't done, he now saw, was listen. He hadn't noticed the quiet sadness that lingered behind Evelyn's smiles, the way her laughter grew rarer each year. When he started attending therapy alone, the counselor told him something that stayed with him. Most affairs don't begin with betrayal, they begin with silence. Those words haunted him. He thought of every moment he had chosen comfort over curiosity, every time he had dismissed her feelings as mood swings or stress. He had never meant to neglect her, but neglect, he learned, doesn't need intention. It only needs inattention. Outside their marriage, the world kept moving. Their friends gossiped in whispers, some offered sympathy, others judgment. But infidelity, though often judged, is not easily understood. It exposes the flaws in the very idea of monogamy, the human struggle between commitment and desire, between stability and freedom. There's a certain irony in how people chase excitement through betrayal. The very thing they risk, their relationship, is often what they're trying to save, in some twisted way. They want to feel again what love used to feel like: new, unpredictable, alive. But real love, the kind that lasts, is never new. It's ordinary. It's built from showing up every day, even when it's dull, even when you don't feel the spark. Evelyn eventually ended things with Daniel. Not out of guilt, but out of clarity. She realized that what she had mistaken for connection was simply a reflection of her own emptiness. Daniel didn't complete her. He only revealed the parts of her that had been neglected. One evening, months later, Evelyn and Mark sat on the porch together. The air was cool, and the city lights flickered in the distance. She told him about how lost she had felt, how she had drifted so far that she no longer recognized herself. Mark didn't interrupt. For once, he listened, not to respond, but to understand. That moment wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It was acknowledgement. The first fragile step toward something honest. The psychology of infidelity, Evelyn came to realize, wasn't just about lust or temptation, it was about survival. It was about people trying, in misguided ways, to escape the emotional starvation that builds in long relationships. Humans crave novelty, attention, desire. When those needs go unmet, The mind starts to wander, seeking nourishment wherever it can find it. But there is always a choice. Always a moment, however brief, when you can turn away. Evelyn missed that moment once. But as she sat beside her husband now, she promised herself she wouldn't miss it again. Months turned into a year. The wounds didn't disappear, but they changed shape. The pain became part of the story they shared. Ugly, necessary, real. They laughed again, though not as often as before. They touched more deliberately, as if reminding each other that connection must be built, not assumed. Sometimes Evelyn would catch herself thinking of Daniel, not with longing, but with a kind of bittersweet gratitude. He had been a mistake, but also a mirror. He had forced her to see herself, to confront her needs, her fears, her loneliness. And in doing so, he had inadvertently helped her return to the life she had almost destroyed. The real reasons people cheat aren't born from evil, they grow from emptiness. From the parts of ourselves that crave recognition, passion, meaning. People cheat not because they want someone else, but because they want to feel something else. Love, she realized, is not about never being tempted. It's about remembering every day why you choose not to be. And so, when Mark reached across the table one evening, his fingers brushing hers, it felt different. Not like the easy love they once had, but like a love reborn from ruin, fragile, deliberate, and real. Because in the end, the psychology of infidelity is also the psychology of being human, imperfect, longing, searching. And if we are lucky, the pain of breaking something precious can become the lesson that teaches us how to hold it right the next time.